And I lost your camera. I think we're just going to do audio.
Yeah, we're going to have to, I think.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going on here. All right. Oh, you're back. All right. All right. Let's get this underway. All right.
Okay.
So we will start in 3, 2, and 1. It's Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. It's springtime, and that also means it's springtime for the knee-jerk Detroit sports talk with Eno and Big Al. This is the Big Al of the equation. Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger, and also someone who's becoming very frustrated with technology tonight. And joining me, as always, is the man who knows a lot of things about a lot of things and has quite a thick Rolodex. And I know a lot of people don't even know what that is anymore. And that would be Greg Eno of the Out of Bounds blog. Greg, what is up?
Is it also springtime for Hitler? Is that another
producer's reference? You can't go wrong with that. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh God, that talk about an old. That's going back to like 1967 and Mel Brooks. What is it? Right. Zero Mostel and a very, very young Gene Wilder.
Zero Mostel. Wow.
Yes.
That's another deep cut.
Yeah, that is a hilarious movie, by the way. If you know, I bet you a lot of people are probably more familiar with Nathan Lane's version of that,
right?
The Broadway play and all that.
And right now they're reviving History of the World Part 2.
I saw the first episode of that. It was,
which was Mel Brooks's movie back in the late 70s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, History of the World Part 2 was on Hulu. I actually watched the first episode. It was okay. I laughed. Yeah. I haven't gotten around to watching numerous episodes. Right now I'm still kind of caught up in my Ted Lasso obsession at the moment. But with that out of the way, now we've already gone off on 2 tangents. No, it was more than that was if you had Mel Brooks, if you had Hitler, and what else we're going to talk about tonight. Greg, with that out of the way, Greg, what's new? Anything going on?
It can only go up from here, right?
Yeah.
I am Greg Eno for my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Al mentioned my Rolodex, which used to be really, really thick, but lately I've been struggling to find the time to get guests. But I am working on a couple of some treats for you guys.
Old friends of the show.
First of all, programming note. We will not be with you on the April 4th taping because Al will be in Florida visiting his father. But we will come back for you on the 18th, and we'll do a post-mortem on the Pistons with Siddy Hall and the NBA playoffs. And then 2 weeks from then, the NFL draft will have taken place. So we'll be talking with our draft guru, Mike Schottey, will be here. Break it down for us. That'll be on May 2nd. So no show on April 4th. We'll come back with you on April 18th and May 2nd with a couple of guests. And yes, they are old friends of the show. Also, I mentioned to follow me on Twitter, and also check me out, please, on the WordPress blog. And I got a piece Al I wrote yesterday on the designated hitter. It turns 50 years old today. Not today, this in a couple of weeks. So read about that. And specifically, I write about Al Kaline and how Kaline probably would not have gotten the 3,000 hits had he not had the DH to lean on. But that's that. We've got a show tonight without guests, but we've got lots of Lions free agent stuff going on. We've got some woeful Red Wings stuff to talk about. Tigers injuries, jerk of the week, and the whole 9 yards. But before I get to any of that, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I'll give Al a clue or 2 or 3 of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if Al can correctly guess that person within the first 2 clues, he'll win a very lovely gift set courtesy of Prince Machiavelli.
Prince Machiavelli. Well, you're pulling those. You're pulling some old school references out here tonight. Good Lord.
You'll get some Musk. You'll get some Musk and some other things. I was either that or English leather. I couldn't tell. Couldn't
I'll put it next to the high karate.
High karate. This person, Al, made his name in the world of football. He's 86 years old today. God bless him. He is a former quarterback. I will say that. Let's see. Did he play in the NFL? He did play briefly in the NFL. Or did he play in the NFL? Let's see here. He did not play in the NFL. He only played in the AFL. Okay, he's an AFL quarterback. But he was very successful, much more successful as a coach than he was a quarterback. And what else can I say about him? He was one of the only one of the few players who played all 10 years in the AFL. I will tell you that. And he was a multi-champion.
Huh. But you see, what's throwing me off is saying he was more successful as a coach.
Yes.
Because when I'm thinking of AFL quarterbacks, I'm thinking like Jack Kemp or
right.
Or Len Dawson, Daryl LaMonica, Joe Namath, guys like that. But then when you throw in coach, and he played. So that means he essentially played in spent his entire 60s, as a quarterback in the AFL. Retired, became a coach, where he became more successful. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Plus you got me all confused when you didn't know what league he played in. This is going to be your fault if I don't get it. Oh shoot! AFL quarterback, won multiple titles. And there were multiple titles. I know the Bills won multiple titles.
Well, the key word there is I didn't say that he won multiple titles as a player.
Okay.
But although he did win at least one of those was as a player.
As a player. Huh. Shoot. Yeah, because my first guess was going to be Jack Kemp, but obviously he became more well known for his politics, being in Congress, and than he wasn't a coach. And I can think of successful AFL coaches.
Right.
No, I'm just going to have to wait for the second one, because I'm just going to keep talking and talking and talking, and we're running out of time as it is. We got started late because Skype is being a pain in the butt tonight. So I'm going to, as they would say on What's My Line, I'm going to flip the $25 card, and I'll go to the 50. So there's another old reference we're probably confusing anybody who was under 50 tonight. So, all right, with that, really, when I was putting together the show tonight, putting together some show notes, I'm like, what the hell are we going to talk about? Because really, the vast majority of news that's gone on over the past couple of weeks, it's all been NFL free agency, and the Lions actually, for the first time in quite a while, making it feels like they didn't overpay for people, Greg, but they looks like they really solidified some holes in the team, in between. But the Red Wings sucked, the Pistons sucked. I commended you before we started recording. I'm barely paying attention to the Wings and the Pistons at this point. I can't remember the last time I really watched one of their games all the way through, because they are just not fun to watch at the moment. And obviously, the Tigers are still in spring training, and there is a little bit coming out of there. So obviously, as always, the NFL is dominating the news cycle, and the Lions are making positive news, if you believe all the pundits, which is, even as just longtime fans, I think I'm pretty impressed with what they've done so far, because, we'll start with free agency. They added several players in free agency who are expected to be either immediate starters or, at the very worst, major contributors. And they also brought back several important role players. And all of these contracts, I think there might be one or two where you could argue they might have overpaid. We'll get into that. But, Greg, the majority of these deals seem reasonably, they seem at a market rate, because we're so used to going through Lions history and seeing them essentially pay a Lions tax to get a free agent. Go back to Trey Flowers. You go all the way back to like Scott Mitchell, for example. And they way overpaid for that guy just to get him to come to Detroit. And we've seen it we saw it for the most part over the past 20 years. Or they would sign guys who would come to Detroit, and essentially it became a retirement tour. Like remember Kyle Vandenbosch, for example.
Right. Yeah.
But this time around, and this is after Brad Holmes really didn't do a lot other than sign his own players, except for the occasional, DJ Chark and stuff like that over the past couple of years. But this year, Greg, things are a little different. And it feels like, in some ways, the Lions seeing a window here, and they're going to take advantage of that open window to win the division and maybe make a playoff run. And I guess it all starts with, obviously, we've talked about that. Cornerback has been probably the Achilles heel of this team for the past few years, because Jeff Okudah just didn't turn out to be the shutdown corner they thought they would be. And Acuna's still around for the time being. He'll play there this year, but I think the days of him being thought of as maybe a number one cornerback, those days have long sailed. So they needed a number one cornerback, and it was either go for a guy in the draft, like Weatherspoon out of Illinois. But instead, they decided to go after the Steelers' number one cornerback, Cameron Sutton. They got him for 3 years, $33 million. He is going to be the new CB1. And this was, I think, a signing, Greg, that caught everybody kind of off guard because it came very early during the tampering period. It was announced before free agency opened on Wednesday. And I think it shocked Steelers fans more than anything else because they thought they were going to keep this guy. And yet the Lions saw an opening, made a reasonable. They didn't overpay. I say 11 million, an average value of 11 million a season for a number one quarterback feels like market rate. Doesn't feel like an overpay, especially if this guy is, he's Pro Bowl quality. This was like coming out the gate of free agency, Greg, surprising to everybody, and he came out swinging and connected by getting one of the top defensive players in free agency.
I guess you have to just, I suppose, just concede that this Dan Campbell thing is real. This isn't just some sort of like the fans. I know the fans love him in Detroit. They just think they've really bought into MCDC, as they call him. But the Dan Campbell pull is real. Among the NFL players that not only who play for him currently, but these new guys that and I know that whenever you sign a new free agent, when you're the new guy in town, you're always going to come in and sing the praises of the team that signed you. Of course you are. But there just seems to be a underlying thread, not just of the guys that the Lions signed, but I've heard it from other players who aren't even on the team, who say very complimentary things about not only Campbell, but the entire coaching staff. There's a lot of respect, I think, for not just Campbell, but a lot of the other coaches. Now, Aaron Glenn is another one.
Yeah, right.
Who's getting a lot of love from these new guys, because obviously a lot of these new guys are secondary guys. And they've either played for Glenn before or they have a relationship with him from the past. In fact, the most recent guy they signed from the Eagles, and Glenn
Gardner Johnson.
Right, Gardner Johnson. He goes back with Glenn to when he was in high school, when Gardner Johnson was in high school. But I think that there is something about this Dan Campbell pull.
Yeah,
it's not just something you saw in Hard Knocks. It's not just something the fans are making up and kind of in their echo chamber talking about Dan Campbell. This is a real thing, and I think that a lot of what you're seeing with these signings now is not only a Campbell factor, but the realization, or at least the impression, that the Lions are building something very, very special, and they want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And this is going into year 3 now, and they are coming off an 8-2 start and a 9-8 season and so forth. The prohibitive favorites, as I said they would be, of the NFC North going into next year. And so, it's time to climb on the bandwagon. And except for when the fans, unlike the fans who climb on the bandwagon for free, these guys are climbing on the bandwagon and getting paid. Yeah. And they're more than happy to do it. But, really, I know we've seen a lot of guys come in here in Detroit and sign contracts. And you mentioned Van den Bosch, and there's some other guys who have been on the back end of their careers. And they say the same things. We can build something here, but this just seems a little bit different to me.
These guys are younger.
These are guys in the prime, right? These are guys that are younger and in their prime, and these are the kind of guys that the Lions maybe in the past would not have gotten.
Right.
Or like you said, in reference to Scott Mitchell, would have had to have paid a little bit more money to get. But you're right; these contracts are either fair market value or even a little bit below.
Right.
Of course, a couple of them are only 1-year deals. That's true.
Yeah.
But that's okay too. That gives each party a chance to decide if this is a good fit or not.
Right.
But I really think that what you're seeing is the real proof in the pudding, as they say, that this Dan Campbell attraction is a real thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because it was, I think the signing, I think that really kind of pushed people over the edge positively. They didn't see coming was signing C.J. Gardner-Johnson out of from the Eagles, who was played on the Super Bowl team, and he took a 1-year, $8 million kind of prove-it deal to come to Detroit. This guy immediately becomes probably your starting slot nickel guy. He can also play on the outside. And what about him? He plays with an edge. He's the type of guy people like to punch, which means I have a feeling Lions fans will immediately take a liking to him. And he's the one who's actually said, he's the player who said, I think we have a better roster in Detroit than we did with the Super Bowl team, the Eagles, and which says a lot. Obviously, there's probably some hyperbole there, but I can also see if the Lions play up to potential, there is the potential for them to be that good of a roster, especially with some of the other things they don't between signing Sutton and then the other defensive back they added. This is a very much a DJ Chark kind of signing in that they picked up Emmanuel Mosley, who was the starting cornerback for the Niners last year. And apparently he had really been stepping up his game. He was worked his way into the starting lineup, and he was really becoming a player that the Niners were planning on leaning on, and then he tore his ACL in October. So he signed a 1-year, $6 million deal, and this feels like or here's your corner if he's healthy or when he becomes healthy, that's your number 2 corner right there. Because that was exactly what he was doing with a playoff team in the 49ers, and the Niners had a very good defense. So all of a sudden, the defensive backfield, Greg, look, was the worst position group on the team last year. All of a sudden, it's starting to look like a possible strength with these veterans they've added, and also some of the younger guys like Kirby Joseph, getting another year of experience. And there's still the draft where they have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds, and they could double down again and get another highly ranked cornerback early on in the draft as well. And honestly, I could see the Lions doing that because Brad Holmes has a history of doing that. We've seen him take multiple defensive linemen early on in the draft. I can see him doing that now, going with if a highly ranked defensive back falls in their lap at 6 or 18, I could easily see them. What the hell? Let's just load up the defensive backfield, considering in today's game, you need to be able to play pass defense.
Well, you need to be able to play pass defense, and depth is never a bad thing to have in the NFL.
No, because we've seen plenty of injuries. So
yeah, I mean, it's never as long as and anymore. And I think we talked about this a while ago when I was talking about linebackers. And you said, well, I'm not sure that Brad Holmes values linebackers that much because let's face it, a lot of times teams are playing nickel defense anyway, which is a good point.
Right.
So now you probably, I don't know how many snaps you would have 5 DBs in versus you'd only have 4, but
right.
A lot of times you have 5 or even 6 defensive backs in the game at any given time. So it does not hurt to have depth there. And what it also does, it gives them more flexibility in the draft, so they maybe don't feel compelled to draft
that's another good point.
Defensive back if they don't want to, or if they feel like they'd rather use that pick somewhere else.
Right.
Maybe they would prefer to use that pick more up front now if they're going to draft on the defensive side. So I mean, but again, I think what's not getting a lot of enough attention is what you said, and what I concurred with is the age factor. Yeah, these guys are guys in their prime.
Yeah, I think the oldest one is like 28.
Right, and everybody else is 24, 25.
Yeah,
and if you look at the age of the defense and the key players on the defense, they're all very young. Hutchinson, James Houston, who would be, it's going to be fascinating to see what kind of a year he has in his second year. Joseph, of course.
Right.
Even
Rodriguez.
Rodriguez. And even Okuda, really, even though I know he's maligned, but he's still young. And the guys they brought in, so it's not like the old days where they would sign a an aging Tim McKyer or an aging Eric Davis or Todd Light or somebody like that. These are guys now in there, ready to make the big bucks. That's the other thing too, Al.
Yeah.
And even the guys who are only on these shorter deals, these shorter terms, they have every incentive in the world because they still have a shot at getting a real big payday.
Right.
Okay, they may have signed a 1-year deal this time.
Yeah.
But the next contract for them could really be handsome if they have a good year. So that's always a good incentive as well.
Right. Yeah. And before we get to the offense, we should touch on the guys who are returning, and a couple of them literally campaigned to come back on the defense, and they were important role players. They're not Pro Bowlers, they're not going to be all-stars, but they were definitely highly thought of parts of the rotation, either especially from like John Comiskey, who was damn near out of the league a couple years ago and has played himself into a 2-year, $8.5 million contract, and is considered, one of the important edge guys, a rotational edge guy now. And Isaiah Buggs, who was really their interior lineman, their interior defensive tackle. He's kind of the run-stopping anchor type rotation player. And both those guys, Buggs and Comiskey, literally campaigned. I remember we talked about this about 4 or 6 weeks ago, that these two were campaigning to come back. Immediately as the season ended, these guys are like, I want to come back. I want to play for this team. I like what we're building here. And they're not getting robbed. They're making good money, but they're not making outrageous money. These aren't long-term deals. Both are 2 years. Like I said, Buggs is getting 2 years, 4.5. Comiskey is getting 2 years, 8.5. And obviously Comiskey is getting more because he is playing a more important position, and he has put up some numbers. But and Buggs, according to the local beat writers, he's been a vocal locker room leader type guy. I mean, he's one of those guys who has stepped up and who was bought in completely on the MCDC way, so to speak, and has become a big locker room guy. And I guess the other guy, though, I think one of the controversial deals on the defense is Alex Anzalone. 3 years, $18.75 million. I think it's probably more likely a 2-year deal that could be bought out in the third. But that's the one that set the fan base off. And I can understand, this is one, though, Greg, where if you watch the games, which we both did, he played very, very well in that last 10-game stretch. He is literally the quarterback of the defense. He is a guy who it was. I think what I've read from some of the beat guys, there's not a guy in the locker room who knows the defense better than he does, because he's played in it longer than anybody else. Going back to his days in New Orleans.
Right.
So I think this is one of those. We want to bring back our glue guy, and. So you can't have all-stars at every position. Right. Sometimes you just need someone who's good enough,
right,
and who also knows what in the hell he's doing there. He's the quarterback back there. Would I like to see a more talented linebacker there? Yeah. But I would also say that I think it's pretty obvious how we've seen this team run over the past going into the third year, is that they don't, as we mentioned earlier, this team really doesn't value linebackers that much. As you said, they're going to be playing mostly 4-down linemen and 5 and 6 defensive backs most of the time, and which means that the linebackers for the most part are 1 and 2 down guys anyway. So considering the other moves they've made with the guys they brought back and the guys they're bringing in, I am not going to get uptight about a possible overpay on the quarterback of your defense, because he's an average at best player.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think you put it perfectly. And you're right. You can't have a Pro Bowler at every position. That's true.
Right.
And does he? I guess you just have to say, does he hurt you more than he helps you?
Yeah,
and no, he does not hurt you more than he helps you. He probably he's probably like a zero war guy, or maybe a little bit.
I think that replacement level would be a good way to put it. Yeah.
If you were to use that same kind of analytic. But yeah, I mean, hey, frankly, if you're going to put your eggs in any basket, you want to have good pass rush guys, and you want to have good cover guys.
Yeah.
And if you happen to have a middling, okay decent zero war middle linebacker who, like you said, is the quarterback of your defense and who knows the defense and is a good, you mentioned a good glue guy, then you can get away with that probably. And and to be honest with you, Al, how many NFL teams defenses that are really high quality elite defenses identify their middle linebacker as their best defender?
The game's changed completely. Your middle linebacker
days.
Yeah, exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. This isn't or to make a Lions reference, this isn't Mike Lucci. You don't have Mike Lucci back there anymore.
Right.
Or Chris Spielman for that matter. The game has changed, and hell, they may already have his replacement on the roster in Rodriguez anyway. Rodrigo. So who was a 6th-round draft pick. If you redid the draft, the guy would probably be at worst a 2nd-round pick. That's how much he outplayed his draft position. So that's one of those. I think this is one of those. He came here. We need, like I said, we need a few guys like this in the locker room who can, at the very least, not embarrass themselves. I think he's not a 3-down guy. I'm not going to get too uptight about it. Would I've liked to see him get him less or not give him 2 years rather than 3? Yeah, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it, considering all the other things they did. And we should also add to bringing back special teams ace C.J. Moore. So apparently, I guess the Patriots were really sniffing on. They really looked like he was actually visiting them there. Will Harris is coming back, one of their defensive backs, a deaf guy. The money badger, Greg, Michael Badgley, the kicker, is at the very least he was signed 1 year, $1.2 million. But the thing with that, I read that only about $300,000 of that, which is a literal drop in the bucket in the salary cap, is guaranteed. So I'm sure we'll see some competition in training camp with kicker because of. I would love to have a guy who has more leg. I think he was 1 of 3 or 2 of 3 from 50, but they were you could tell they were, once they started getting into that past that 45-yard range, they were very leery of letting him take kicks. So that's one where I could see maybe they'll burn a draft pick on or sign a priority undrafted free agent and actually for some competition. But but he was accurate from short range. So if you ride into the season with him, you just have to know the guy's limitations. So there's no, I guess they'll agree with that. We've just been spoiled for the past 3.5 decades of this team having great kickers. And all of a sudden to see a average one is kind of a shock to the system, to say the very least. But I don't mind him bringing him back, even if he does have a bit of a silly nickname that he gave himself. So, but offensively, now that's where things get interesting. First off, there's a reunion. Graham Glasgow is coming back. He played the last 3 years with the Broncos, 4 years with the Broncos. He was a 3rd-round draft pick by the Lions. Became an immediate starter. He was either a center. He was a center before Ragdown, and he shifted over to guard. He came back on a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. He's going to replace Evan Brown, who actually was their deaf center guard player who was going to Seattle, who I think he's going there because I think he wants to start. He's hoping to be able to start. But this one is still kind of up in the air as to what the use of him is going to be. At the very least, he's going to be the replacement for Brown. He'll be the swing guard. He'll be the backup guard at center. And you can do a lot worse than Graham Glasgow. But what's interesting here is we don't know what they're going to do with Vitae. If they're going to do a Hala Vitae, that Glasgow could slide into the starting lineup if they decide to move on from Vitae, make him he'd be like a June 1st cut for salary cap reasons. And also there's the back issue with him that he missed most of last year due to a back injury. His entire tenure in Detroit has been hampered by injuries, and I could see them possibly moving on from him and then sliding Glasgow into the guard position, or for that matter, now that they've filled some of these holes, they could end up drafting a guard and figuring it out that way between Glasgow and a rookie. So, but I have a feeling Vitae might be on thin ice at this point. But Glasgow seems like and what's interesting, I don't know if you saw the presser of his and the reports from that, is that there was other teams interested in him. Even though he didn't have the best of years in Denver, and I think that could be written off. He was hurt, but also Denver was a literal train wreck last year offensively because of the. We've talked about what happened in Denver and under Russell Wilson, but he said he wanted to come back. He wanted to come back with his boys. He wanted to play with Taylor Decker and Frank Ragnow, and as he put it, I want to be in that offensive line room with those guys. And I think this is going to be a good team. But he just wanted to come back to Detroit. Another guy who wants to come back because he likes the atmosphere, and that says volumes.
Well, he's a
local kid, yeah.
Well, and he played for Matt Patricia here, so that's another reason why anything other than that's going to seem like a breath of fresh air. But again, this is another kind of under the radar move that didn't get a lot of play in the NFL circles. But again, the depth on the offensive line. I mean, that was part of the problems. They weren't able to get all those five guys playing together at the same time.
Yeah, when they were playing Dan Skipper at guard, which is the last place he should be playing. That's how bad they were banged up at the offensive line at times.
And when they've got everybody, healthy, I mean, that is a very good. I mean, that's not me talking. That you go around the league, they'll say the Lions have one of the best offensive lines in the game, and I mean, that's another one of those moves that he wants to be back with his guys, but he also wants to play for Campbell. It's against that Campbell thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And these players, they talk to each other. They, even when they're not on the same team, they talk with each other. They're friends from college, or they played against each other in college. That's why when you see an NFL game and the final gun goes off and all the players get before they walk off the field, they all gather on the field and trade, how do you do, because they all know each other. I mean, a lot of these guys either met each other at the combine, or they played against each other in college, or they played with each other in college, or they were once teammates in the NFL, or they were maybe one guy was on his way out and one other guy was at mini camp. And these guys have relationships with players, with their brethren that are just spiders out, like it just spiders out. And so that's why a lot of these guys know each other, and they talk to each other, they'll text to each other, and you can't, I'm sure that's what was going on with Glasgow and his old buddies. This is hey, you're gonna love this, and because Ragnow knows he was under the old regime, and so was Decker, of course. Hey, we can look. This is way different than it used to be when you were here the first time. When you left under that Matt Patricia stench, now it's just like a breath of fresh air. Come back to Detroit, and he's still young enough, he can do it. He's not old. He's probably about 30 or
I think he's 30 years old.
But it's okay. I mean, these guys can play. These linemen can play into their mid 30s if they keep themselves in shape. So, I mean, hey, another one of those moves that it's not going to set the world on fire, but come October, when you need another guy to rotate in the offensive line, if he's not starting. You rotate a guy like Glasgow in, and that's not a bad deal.
Right, exactly. And now we need to get into the most controversial signing, or the one I think that at least got the fan base a little bit upset, because this is one of those where I think the Lions didn't get emotional about it, and that the fans were nothing but emotional about it.
Right.
And that is the Lions, surprisingly at the time, decided that they wanted to move on from Jamal Williams. So we'll get into the reasons what the he said, she said type stuff. And they signed Bears running back David Montgomery, essentially to fill the same exact role that Jamal Williams had. And he essentially had the same role when he played for the Bears. And he was signed for decent money, not huge money, but good money for a running back. He got 3 years, $18 million. And that obviously he's going to replace Jamal Williams. And from all accounts, he's younger, he's shiftier, he breaks more tackles, he's a better receiver, and from all accounts, he is just a better running back. And this is one of those where the fans like, oh my God, they're losing Jamal Williams. But Montgomery is an all-around better quarterback, better running back. But he doesn't like anime, and he's not as emotional as Williams was. And obviously, Williams made a lot of Lions fans love him by his by him being in his actions in Hard Knocks, by looking like a team leader, for example, and plus a lot of the stuff he did during the year, and the fact that he did score 17 touchdowns. So you could argue that was really an outlier, kind of a fluke, because I believe I think at least 10 of them were within like 2 yards. He's not going to recreate this last season. At 28 years old, you wouldn't expect to have another 1,000-yard year. He's not going to have. He probably won't even have double-digit touchdowns. It was just a fluke year for him. But from all accounts, Montgomery is a better player. And this is one of those where the Lions thought we have an opportunity to upgrade the position. And obviously, I think he would be a better fit if Swift goes down, which he likely will, as your number one running back, than Williams would be as your number one running back, just because Montgomery is shiftier, can break more tackles, and just is more of a 3-down back than Jamal Williams is. So was Williams fun? Yeah, he was a hell of a lot of fun to watch this last couple of years. I mean, ask Packers fans. Packers fans loved him too. But in the NFL, running back is a fungible position. It's very mercurial. These guys are easy to replace. And some people thought, hell, an average value of $6 million a year for running backs an overpay. And you could probably argue that it just might be in today's environment. But this is a definite upgrade. I hate seeing Williams leave, but Montgomery's an upgrade, pure simple.
He is, for all the reasons you outlined. He's 2 years younger. He is a better receiver, no question about that. Williams had kind of stone hands, and he wasn't that wasn't his forte. You're right on the money when you said that a lot of. I mean, I'm not denigrating his year whatsoever, but a lot of those touchdowns, like you said, were inside the 5-yard line. That's fine. That's okay.
Yeah.
You got to score them somehow. But I mean, I don't care if will David Montgomery come in and score 17 touchdowns? No, probably not. Yeah. But that's okay, because you could probably get touchdowns other ways from other people.
Right.
I think Montgomery is a better player. Whenever I saw him play, I liked him. I thought he was a good back. But you're right. Running back is a position anymore that just isn't. That's also not as valued as it used to be, because it's a wide receiver league and so forth. But you still want to have a running game. You still want to have a guy that can get you 1,000 yards. That can, like you said, break tackles, was elusive and so forth. Got some explosiveness. It's not like running back it's not a dismissed position by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that running backs anymore don't have the careers that they had when you and I were starting to follow football, and even deep into the 90s, when guys like Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas would play for 8 to 10 years and would be very productive for 8 to 10 years. It's not the way it is anymore. I mean, and these guys don't carry the ball 20, 25 times like a game like they used to. So, you're looking for a guy that can get maybe 15 to 20 touches. It's all you need to do to get 1,000 yards anymore is to average about 60, 70 yards a game, and in a 16, 17 game schedule. So, I mean, but I believe that he is a better player, Montgomery, and I'm with you. I like Williams as well. I like, he was a fun guy, but he also, you mentioned controversy. He also kind of left the team a little bit sour grapes as well in his presser. You're muted, Al.
Yes, I was. There we go. And that was it. Really turned into a he said she said that Jamal Williams claimed he was disrespected by the Lions' offer, but other accounts are saying that the blame really should go to Williams' agent, who may have misplayed his hand. Waited too long to make a decision, because at the press conference in New Orleans, Williams, his deal ended up being 3 years, $12 million, and includes $8 million guaranteed. During his presser, Williams said, "After the offer they made, being Lions, I felt like it was disrespectful and showing that they didn't really want me to be there like that." But the Freep's Dave Burkett reported the Lions attempted to re-sign Williams and offered him a contract similar to the one that gave David Montgomery, but pivoted to Montgomery as Williams' agent shopped the market for better deals. And he's not the only guy reporting that. There's been some other national guys saying the Lions actually offered Williams more money than Montgomery got. So there's probably a little bit of a smoke screen and going on from both sides. And that stuff, that news from the Lions, that's like what Burkett's reporting and some of the other guys, that's coming straight from the Lions. I'm sure that's coming from the Lions. That's being leaked from them to make them, to get that out to the fan base, if you know what I'm saying. We wanted him to come back and we offered him a deal. He just didn't, we couldn't wait, which makes sense. And I could also see Williams having a chip on his shoulder, but I also would think he may have to have a discussion with his agent if he really wanted to come to Detroit. And he was being offered $6 million a year, if not more. I can't believe he didn't jump at it, considering he's a 28-year-old running back coming off the best year of his career, likely the best year he'll ever have.
Right, exactly. It kind of tarnished a little bit, all the goodwill that he had mustered. But hey, how many times football's a business, sports is a business.
There you go.
Okay, fine.
Right.
And that's just the way it is. And yeah, I mean, he gave the Lions fans and the team some good production and some fun stuff, and that's fine. But this is the time now, and maybe a guy like that, Al, when you're trying to establish yourself and you're trying to climb out of the cesspool that they were in with after Patricia left. Yeah, a guy like that. Yeah, I mean but now we're at the point now where it's about, okay, do you want to take the next step as an organization? And we presume that you do. So if you do, then you've got to make decisions that are based on that. Not, you mentioned at the top of the discussion on this topic, the fans were nothing but emotional, and the Lions were anything but emotional.
Right.
And about this, and the way the Lions approach this, of course, is the right way to do it, of course, because it could you roll with Williams another year? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But if you're really looking at the whole scheme of things here, and you really want to upgrade your team, if you want to spend your money, how do you want to spend your money? Essentially, would you rather spend your money in Williams, put your money in Williams, or in Montgomery, who's 2 years younger, who the Lions know very well, having played him twice a year in the division, and vice versa, and a guy maybe who Montgomery, by the way, is probably looking at the Lions as a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Because the Bears are a train wreck as well. I mean, you mentioned the Broncos. Well, the Bears are the Broncos of the NFC, of the NFC. And they're a train wreck. They're a mess over there.
Yep.
So this is a good thing for Montgomery. Go to a team that's on the rise, has a chance, very good chance to win the division, make the playoffs and so forth. But again, it's all about, at the end of the day, you've got to take that Steve Yzerman approach, which is what makes the Detroit Lions better.
Right.
What helps us get to the next level? When we were 3-14, a guy like Williams, sure. And when we were scrambling to come out of that, a guy like Williams again in year 2, I'll buy it.
Yep.
But now you come to a crossroads, and where's my money better spent? Is my money better spent with this guy Williams, who's a fan favorite, no question, and who's fun, and who we presume was nothing but a good teammate? Or do I spend my money, the comparable money, on a 2-year younger guy who I think privately is not a much better player, but is a better all-around player than Williams? Which of those options gives my team the better chance to take that next step forward? And I think most people would say it's with Montgomery. I mean, Montgomery's he's a good back. There's no question about it. I was kind of surprised when I read. First of all, I thought the Lions were going to indeed re-sign Williams, but when they didn't re-sign Williams, I didn't really think about Montgomery. I really didn't think Montgomery was even on the radar. And all of a sudden, they announced almost in one fell swoop. Not only are they not re-signing Williams, but they're signing Montgomery. I said, "Wow."
You're beeping.
Yeah, my this is part about being a diabetic. You got these gizmos that you have on you, and they go off on occasion. So,
do you need to run off and get some orange juice?
No, I'm
all right. No, all right, good. But yeah, it's it's this. Yeah, it was completely understandable what the Lions did, but they did, especially early on in free agency when guys are being signed left and right. You don't want to wait. And the Lions didn't want to be left in the dust because I'm sure they weren't the only team that ever had eyes on Montgomery. And I want Williams to have a great year in New Orleans, but I want Montgomery to have an even better year here in Detroit. It is what it is, and it just goes to show one that you can't get too attached to ball players because, as you said, it's a business. And I could not believe some of the reactions that I saw online about people I thought they were emotionally distraught over losing Jamal Williams, which I found to be a bit over the top for essentially a role player. But then again, Greg, how often have we seen in this town where they fall in love with role players, with with personality types,
right.
Guys who aren't superstars, but they become more beloved than the actual star players. They
style over substance.
Yeah, hell, this is a town that fell in love with Don freaking Kelly, for Christ's sake, and he sucked. But he had a few good plays, and he had a home run in a playoff game, and now he's Donnie Kelly baby forevermore. So, but yeah, it's overall though, get back on the track. This is a very surprising free agency session for the Lions. So I wasn't expecting them to come out the way they did. They just come out really getting guys and actually paying fair rates for these guys. And now the question is this is the headline I saw in M-Live today from Kyle Meineke, none of the beat writers. Is the Lions rebuild over, Greg? That's the headline. Is the rebuild over? And one of the money quotes from it was mostly players saying this for the most part that he was talking about. And this is the money quote. If it wasn't true before, it is now. The rebuilding phase of the rebuild is over. Holmes has spent good money to bring in bona fide players who are ready to win, and now Detroit is too. And I can't believe we're talking about this, Greg, but I can kind of buy into this, that especially how they've done a free agency, all the boatload of draft picks they have coming up in the draft, and the fact that now with some of these moves they made, it's wide open as to who they can draft, who they can pick now. As you said, you don't necessarily have to take a quarterback. They don't have to take a defensive lineman. They could take a flyer on an offensive lineman. They could go for a wide receiver. They could go for the running back out of Texas. They could. We just don't know now or they could make a trade up, trade down. Maybe they want to go get Will Anderson. Maybe they want to take that future quarterback. We don't know. The moves they've made has allowed them to maybe they could take a home run swing at a draft pick. They'll go for the really high ceiling guy who might have a really high floor. Maybe an Anthony Richardson, for example. But there's also the fact that for the first time in a long time, the division really looks wide goddamn open, especially if all the drama going on in Green Bay and, with Aaron Rodgers, going on his little I'm going to lock myself in the dark for a week and then make a decision. And now I want to go to the Jets, but the Packers don't want to they want a Matthew Stafford-like return. And the Jets are saying, you got to be kidding. So between all the drama going on in Green Bay, and then you got, as you just mentioned, the Bears were a train wreck last year. Yes, they spent a lot of money in free agency, but they had to because they had a shit ton of cap room. And the Vikings were probably the luckiest team in NFL history last year. They were 13-4. That they probably should have been more of maybe a 10-win team at best, maybe even a 9-win team because they won some lucky ass games last year. The division looks wide open. I think the Lions have seen that, Greg, and they are acting in this offseason like, yes, this is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go for the division. This is the year to do it. It's time. And obviously being helped by the finish of last year of going 8-2 to end the year. But it really, really looks like the front office sees an opening here to really make a statement that this is the year. The division is open. The playoffs are wide open. It's time for us to make a move.
Well, we talked about this, that it shouldn't take much more than 3 years anyway to
Right.
do a rebuild. I mean, of course it's time. Unlike some of these other rebuilds that we're going through in this town, I think this is the one that you can say, yeah, okay,
Right.
enough with the rebuild stuff. It's time to, now here's the thing though.
Yeah.
And you're gonna hear me talk about this ad nauseum between now and deep in the next football season, which is
right.
And I talked about it briefly in one of the previous shows we just did, and that is okay. Good on the Lions for finishing 8-2, no question. Hats off. It would be ridiculous of me to not acknowledge that. Okay, 8-2, fine. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Now this is where it gets. Dan Campbell is kind of passing some tests along the way. Okay, he's kind of clearing some hurdles now. The next big hurdle now is, okay, here we are. We're no longer the lovable Detroit Lions. We're no longer the team on Hard Knocks. We're no longer the easy win on your schedule, supposedly. We are now bona fide, according to all the experts. All those magazines that come out, by the way, in July, all those football preview magazines that start to fill up the newsstands. The folks used for their fantasy football drafts and all the whole 9 yards, people just use just to buy them and get caught up in what's going on in the league. All of those magazines, when they do their preseason prognostications, are going to put the Lions number one in the NFC North. There's no question about that. So now, how does this team respond to that? Now, you all the props in the world for picking themselves up off the ground from 1-6, finishing 9-8, all the respect in the world. I can't not acknowledge that. But now what do they do? This is where Campbell now, and this is where I think Campbell is a good fit for the Lions, because he does not strike me as a guy who will let his team get too full of themselves. I don't think he's going to let this get away from them. Now he seemed, but you could also, a pessimist could say that maybe Campbell is better suited for that underdog role. Maybe he's better suited for a team that nobody's expecting anything from, and he sneaks up on you. Well, now the Lions can't sneak up on anybody anymore. This isn't going to be, they go into the season and the Detroit Lions, no. No. Now they are they're the dog. Everybody's hunting in the division, and whether Campbell wants to admit that, I know the players are ready to embrace that role. Of course, they're all. I'm sure they're ready to embrace the role of being the hunted in the division as opposed to the hunter. But still, a cynic could say, well, maybe Campbell's a coach that's better suited for a team that doesn't have a lot of expectations. Well, now there's going to be a lot of expectations. And let's face it, a guy like Campbell, Al, I mean, let's just be honest. A guy like Campbell would never have been hired by the Steelers or the Rams or the Cowboys, or if those teams were looking for coaches, or the Packers or the Bengals. He would not have been. Let's just be honest. He would not have been.
Right.
The reason he was hired, one of the reasons he was hired, is because they were the Lions, and the Lions were looking for something different. They were looking for something. It was almost a Hail Mary in a way to hire a guy like that. Now, I'm not saying he didn't kill the interview. I'm not saying that he wasn't that he didn't get everybody motivated when they talked to him, when they brought him in to interview for the job.
Right.
But he's not the kind of guy, Al, that gets a job in an elite NFL franchise. He's just not. So now which is fine. That's okay. But now he has a chance, though, to have an elite team, and at least a division winner, which anymore means you're one of the 8 best teams in the league, presumably. Have a division-winning team that he's coaching, and can be a kind of now. Here's what's going to be interesting now. Also, back when the Pistons won their title in 2004. Everybody wanted to replicate that. Well, let's try to maybe the new way of winning now is you don't need a superstar. Maybe you just need 5 really good guys. Okay, well that didn't work, of course.
Yeah,
the Pistons were a unicorn in that regard.
Yep.
But now it'd be interesting to see if Campbell indeed does pull this off. When I say pull this off, wins the division this year in year 3, like he's predicted to do. If he does this, even wins a playoff game, for example, will other teams in the NFL who are looking for coaches, will they then want to look for their Dan Campbell?
Yeah.
Will the Dan Campbell model, if you will, become the new rage in the NFL? We've gone through phases in the NFL with coaches.
Well, the NFL is a copycat league, always has been.
Right. We've gone through phases where you can see it. If you and I were to pull back, and big picture this over the past, 20, 30 years, you can see the types of guys who were getting head coaching jobs, and it kind of goes in different kind of cycles or eras. Now, if Campbell does this and pulls this off, will other teams say, okay, I want to look for my Dan Campbell. Yeah. Where's my Dan Campbell out there? And will a bunch of meatheads become coaches in the NFL? Because maybe that's going to be the new trend. Some owner is going to tell his GM, find me a Dan Campbell.
Yeah. Find me by Mike Vrabel or Dan Campbell. Those are the two guys I'm thinking of right there.
And it would be hard. I don't really blame them. I mean, if he's going to have success with Detroit of all teams, my God, with that franchise, if he has success with the Lions of all teams, and where you can't say that the success just kind of fell into his lap. You can't say that either. Some guys get hired into places and it kind of all falls into place for them because they've got the talent, or they've got the ownership, or they've got the whatever. They happen to be along for the ride. Mike Tomlin is an example initially.
Right.
Well, you can't say that about Campbell. You can't say, well, he came in here and everything was just fine and dandy and he just kind of fit right in. And no, this was a complete shot in the dark when they hired this guy. Let's face it. And so if he's able to, in year 3, go from 3 wins to 9 wins to 11 wins, let's say, to win the division, I would not blame an NFL owner who's looking for another coach to say, I want my Dan Campbell too. Yeah. Find me a guy like that. Because if he can do it in Detroit, then you can do it just about anywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, wasn't that long ago, everybody wanted the next Cliff Kingsbury, Sean McVay type.
Right. Yes.
And then it kind of imploded in Denver and a few other places. And now it's, like I said, now they want Mike Vrabel. They might, as you said, I would not be surprised that the next thing you see is a bunch of Campbell and Vrabel clones overwhelming the league.
We went through that phase where it was all legacy guys. Wade Phillips and Mike Nolan and David Shula. Yep. They were hiring everybody's son. Everybody's son was getting a job. Yep. Well, that didn't work. So now it'd be interesting to see if that's indeed what teams decide to do. And the other person who's making a lot, who can pretty much right now is sitting on top of the football world, is Brad Holmes.
Yeah.
I don't know how long the Lions, I don't know what his contract, what the length of his contract is, but if they come out in year 3 and win the division like they're supposed to, I'm guessing he probably signed a 4 or 5 year contract. I'm guessing.
Yeah, because Campbell got 6. I think the word was his was actually longer than Holmes, if I remember right.
Right. So let's say Holmes signed for 5, for example. Right. Well, now we're in year 3 of that. If they go ahead and win the division, I can see the Lions. I can see Sheila tearing that contract up and extending that for another 2 or 3. Why not? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And Holmes is another guy who, NFL teams are going to try to get their Brad Holmes.
Right.
He came from the Rams, of course. Right. We know that. Excuse me, but still,
but he came from the college side of the draft side of things.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I think we're seeing that right now. I think we're seeing his acumen for finding good college players.
Right.
Is what's helping this along.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see it. You make a great point. Can you picture an NFL full of Dan Campbell clones? Honestly, that would be a breath of fresh freaking air, if you ask me. for a long time, you wanted the next Belichick, who was when we had that in Detroit with freaking Matt Patricia.
But you know what's going to happen?
Sourpuss,
right.
You know?
Well, the Belichick thing has never ever worked.
Nope.
I don't know how many times
is barren.
I don't know how many times they've Belichick, the Belichick coaching tree. Yep. I don't know how many times those guys have got head coaching jobs, and none of them have won anywhere.
Right.
But the thing is that what's going to happen is you're going to see some Dan Campbell wannabes, and you're going to see a lot of guys fail miserably. And Jeff Saturday,
yeah, that's a good call.
Now, even though Saturday came in mid-season and really shouldn't have gotten the job to begin with, but he was a train wreck. What you're going to see are guys, you mentioned a bunch of Dan Campbell clones in the league. You may see more of them, yes, but they're not all going to be successful, of course.
Right.
And so that bloom will fall off the rose, and then they'll move on to another model.
Yeah, and how surprised is it to see the Lions of all teams maybe be at the forefront of a trend rather than be the copycat to wannabe, and that almost always fails. That's a fascinating concept that I can't get my head around right now. But yeah, I mean, obviously the jury's still out, but signs are looking good that Campbell is that unicorn that we've wanted in Detroit for decades. And we're seeing that this offseason by nothing but good words we're hearing from players and the guys you're bringing in and the guys who want to stay. Oh, it's I'm not used to this. This is, I mean, I can get used to it, but I am not used to the Lions being a destination. And it's beginning to look like the Lions might be a destination. And in the NFL is not like the NBA or Major League Baseball so much, where especially the NBA, where it's all about location. It's all about finding a state that has the least amount of income tax or that kind of or market size for that matter. In the NFL, a place like Green Bay could become a destination if you had the right stuff in place. If you had the right coach and the right quarterback, and you had the salary cap space and things kind of meshed. Cold weather teams can become a destination. Maybe Detroit's going to be the next Green Bay of the NFC North. It'd be great to see.
Well, Matt Stafford did way more for the Lions in his departing than he did.
Yeah, he had nothing but good things to say.
Well, what I'm saying is that it was because they traded Stafford that they got their starting quarterback.
Yep.
And they got all these draft picks.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's what started the whole rebuild process, with getting all these draft picks, and the Lions did pretty good with these picks.
Yeah.
And they still have lots of draft picks. And that's what they do. They stockpile draft picks.
Yep.
And for the most part, they've hit on them.
Yeah.
And that's how you do it.
It's going to be interesting, Greg, if we see an overcorrection, because look at what teams gave up, what the Rams gave up to get Stafford, and what Denver gave up to get Russell Wilson. And, they literally sacrificed their future for the short term and getting that franchise quarterback.
Well, and it worked because they won. They won.
At least it worked. It worked in L.A. It didn't work in Denver.
No, right.
Right. But you got to wonder that now you hear the Packers saying to the Jets, "We want a similar package that Denver, that Seattle and Detroit got." And Seattle and Detroit are now looking very, very good for the future because of those hauls they made, and the fact that they did find replacement quarterbacks. And I can see the Jets say no. We do want Aaron Rodgers, but he's 39 freaking years old and a diva. I can see maybe giving up a first round pick. Maybe I can't see them getting more than that though.
No, I agree, but the Lions are really, they're doing this exactly the way that you would set it up on a blackboard. When it comes to like, okay, how do you breathe life back into an NFL franchise? Well, you stockpile draft picks, you fill in gaps with free agency. You don't use free agency. You don't give out really huge contracts. You don't break the bank you don't overpay for guys. Right. You find players in the later rounds. They're checking off Holmes is checking off all those boxes right now. and then you make it, if you're going to make a big trade like they did.
Yep.
Then you get it because that's the thing about that Stafford trade.
Yeah.
Unlike some of these other trades, you mentioned Wilson and the potential Rodgers trade and so forth. The Lions actually got a starting quarterback back in that trade.
Yes,
I mean, that's unusual. That's very unusual.
Who is actually now his contract, which everybody thought was outrageous, now looks perfectly fine.
And they should probably lock him in, Goff in, is right
before
now.
He gets super expensive. I can see them doing that right now. We'll see how this year goes. But yeah, if he has a decent year this coming year, I can see the Lions just we're going to extend you right now. We'll get you at $40 million rather than 55 or something like that. I still think it'll be. Now, I know we're getting ahead of things somewhat, but I can see the negotiations, especially if Goff continues to play well. I can see the negotiations between the Lions and Goff becoming very, very interesting, because Goff would owe the Lions something for essentially saving his career, putting him in a position to succeed. But on the other hand, he knows what quarterbacks are going for. We talked about it on the last podcast, when you got guys like Danny Dimes getting $40-45 million a year. Goff could go, shit, I can do better than I'm a better quarterback. So that's going to be fun, interesting to watch, especially if the year pans out like we hope it's going to, and seeing what the Lions decide. And the draft could change all that. We still don't know. We still don't know. Maybe the Lions will decide to go, we want we want Will Levis, or we want Anthony Richardson, or we we want one of those quarterbacks, and maybe that changes everything. So I just find it interesting that the Lions are by far, Greg, the most interesting team here, and we're in the middle of the offseason. We're not even to the draft, and they're by far the most fascinating team around right now. I couldn't fathom saying that 2 years ago.
Well, you know what doesn't, people don't talk about it anymore, because it's 2 years ago, and it seems like it was longer ago than that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that Brad Holmes did, and we probably should have, we did know it at the time because he was so new, but what ended up being sometimes it's not about who you sign or who you extend, but who you don't sign and who you don't extend. And
right.
He did not give the big money to Kenny Golladay.
Yep. Yeah.
That is looking so good in the rear. Boy, Holmes saved the Lions. Lions dodged a bullet.
Yes.
Golladay. Yeah. They really did.
Yep.
And now, you can't say that for sure that things would have gone the same for him in Detroit had he signed that it went for him in New York. But he was awful with the Giants.
Yeah, sure looked like Matthew Stafford made him that $80 million contract more than anything else.
So Holmes from the get-go, that was one of the. In fact, when he came to town, Holmes, that was like the first decision he had to make.
Yep.
Was the first big decision was that's what all the press was asking him about all the time. What are you going to do with Golladay? What are you going to do with Golladay? What are you going to do with Golladay? And he would just say, well, I'm not sure yet. And he decided, no, thanks, but no thanks. And that was, what a great non-move that was.
Yeah. It's and obviously he was just released after putting up awful numbers over 2 or 3 years. It was just he was a literal non-entity with the Giants, a non-entity. And it was, I did not see that coming. Golladay, he was one of those guys where he put up numbers, but it's looking more and more like those numbers were much thanks to his quarterback rather than the other way around. And that's Holmes showing his acumen when it comes to personnel. That's what the Lions got him. Why the Lions signed him, and so far, that was the first smart move he made. He's been making a series of smart moves since. All right, Greg, before we move on, I think we'll talk a little Tigers. What's question number 2 of the birthday game? Are you gonna confuse me again? Are you sure he played in the AFL?
This is for the Prince Machiavelli, so let's
pressure's on.
Quarterback, of course, like I said, played all 10 years of the AFL. He was a Super Bowl winning coach, as it turned out, after his playing career. And he was also an executive in the NFL. And as a coach, he himself replaced a coaching legend.
How many coaching legends were there in the AFL? Not a lot. So And I think we're talking about the Raiders then, because you're probably talking about the guy who replaced Madden. And I think you're talking Tom Flores.
Very good.
Yeah.
I like the thought. I like. I
Yeah.
can see the gears.
Well, that's what kind of gave it away. He said he became a legend, but he replaced a bigger legend essentially.
Yes, he did. And Tom Flores, who I think was also the first minority.
He was.
Something about his ancestry. He was like
I believe he's Hispanic.
Right. He is Hispanic for sure.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing about Flores. He and Mike Ditka are the only two men who have won a Super Bowl as a player, as an assistant coach, and as a head coach.
Wow, that's talk about an exclusive company.
Ditka did it with the Cowboys as a player. He did it with the Cowboys as an assistant, and he did it with the Bears, of course. Flores did it with the Chiefs in Super Bowl 3 or 4. And he in his last.
So he was Len Dawson's backup.
Len Dawson's backup, and he won it, and he won as an assistant with the Raiders under Madden, and of course he won as a head coach with the Raiders as well.
Right.
So Tom Flores, good job. He's 86 today. Happy birthday, Tom! And you win the Prince Machiavelli collection.
All right. Well, I'll have to get the Brill cream out of the way then.
Oh, by the way, we should say for folks who've been listening to this program. They're probably wondering, how does Al get all these? Well, we use FedEx as our. We do. I should probably, in exchange for a promotional consideration. So I should be mentioning that at every show.
Yes.
The promotional fees and promotional consideration provided by FedEx for all these.
Oh my God! Oh Jesus! Oh, fees and promotional considerations. Now we just need to add the. This broadcast, there's no rebroadcast allowed unless you get permission from Major League Baseball. Oh, shoot. Which just reminds me, I know I saw online not long ago where someone actually, just on a lark, sent Major League Baseball a letter saying he was having a party, he wanted to replay a game. Could he have permission to do it? And actually, he got it permission, a letter from Major League Baseball back saying, sure. Oh, I got it. Which I guess that's a good way to segue into Major League Baseball, specifically the Tigers. If you want to call them a Major League Baseball team, that's still kind of in question right now. And I guess this past couple weeks, there's been just a lot of roster shuffling going on down in Lakeland. And we pretty much know what the starting lineup for the most part is likely going to be. They're still not sure like who's going to be the fourth outfielder, who's going to be the backup infielder. Is Akil Baddoo going to be one of the starting outfielders? They're going to ride Kerry Carpenter, but we got the final revenge of Avila, Greg. And it was essentially the utter folly of basing a foundation from the foundation up rebuild around the most volatile type of player around, young starting pitching. Well, that just came back to bite them again in the ass during spring training over the past week, as the Tigers announced, Greg, that 20-year-old top prospect, right-handed pitcher out of high school, Jackson Jobe, he was the third overall pick in 2021, will miss 3 to 6 months with what they're calling lumbar spine inflammation. That could be pretty much goddamn anything. I have ankylosing spondylitis. That's essentially what I have, and that essentially crippled me. Because I ended up with a fused spine because of lumbar spine inflammation. So, obviously the Tigers aren't saying much, but this is very alarming for a 20-year-old to have major back problems that are very non-specific, but sound very not good, if you know what I'm saying. Right. So it looks likely that this 3 to 6 month timeline is 3 to 6 months before he can even work out. This isn't he'll be back then. This is he could start baseball related activities in maybe 6 months. So it's looking likely that the Tigers' top prospect will miss the entire 2023 season, joining the litany of young starting pitchers who have gotten hurt or continue to be hurt. The list is long as your arm at this point, Greg. And what's even worse about what's going on with Joe, is that shortstop Marcelo Meyer, the player Avila passed over and Boston immediately stepped up as the fourth overall pick. You know, he was the best. Yeah, he was one of the top. He was the top prep position player in the draft that year, and it was a position of obvious need, middle infield, shortstop, and now he is the 10th overall rated prospect in all of baseball and is considered the Red Sox shortstop of the future. We'll probably talk about the next year or two. So that's just like rubbing salt in this whole era of Tigers baseball, Greg, is that the final draft pick of the last regime looks like his future looks very much in doubt now. It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is. On the one hand, you can't blame Al Avila for injuries, of course, but on the other hand, there does seem to be some sort. I don't know what to make about this, because is it just a string of bad luck, which is possible, or is it just, is there something wrong with the training regimen of the staff, or I don't know. I mean, I know the Tigers have addressed it.
Or young pitchers get hurt. It's just a known fact. It's just what they do.
Right. And I'm sure that if you looked around the league hard enough, you'd find other pitchers from other organizations that have issues. It's not just the Tigers. Of course, we're only tuned into the Tigers, but yeah, I mean, there's something, I don't know. I don't know if it's something that happens to them in high school. If it's the way that if they're just throwing too hard, I don't know.
I think you probably you're headed in the right direction. I think is that these kids are essentially playing one sport from when they're like preteens. They're 7, 8, 9 years old. You're a pitcher. You're going to start throwing a curveball, and you're going to start throwing the ball as hard as you can, as young as you can. And all of a sudden, you're seeing these guys in their late teens, early 20s needing Tommy John surgery. I don't think that is a coincidence, for example, especially the fact that that's the only sport they played. I can't believe these kids don't get burned out by the time they're teenagers. So I think you're really onto something there. One of the reasons they're getting injured is just because of the heavy use of these, and obviously could be the lack of coaching, could be numerous things. And just the fact that throwing a baseball, Greg, is completely unnatural. And throwing a baseball at 100 mile an hour is even more unnatural. And the fact that the Tigers went all in on young, hard-throwing pitchers, it was bound to end in disaster, and it pretty much has.
You know what, though, too, Al, is that we were talking in the football segment about how running backs are not maybe as valued as they used to be, and so forth. And this whole young, hard throwing pitcher thing seems to me to be so 2005 or 2010. It doesn't seem to be pitching in general, starting pitching in general, seems to be kind of going the way of the running back, the big time running back. And we were talking about, running backs don't carry the ball 25 times anymore a game. And they don't play for 8 to 10 years anymore.
Yeah, it's like the Justin Verlander is like the Barry Sanders. You just don't see that guy anymore.
That's a good analogy. And you wonder if you'll ever see that again, really. And I don't know. I don't know how much premium you should put anymore on young arms. I really don't. I don't know if that's something that, clearly their last couple of drafts have been, offense heavy with Torkelson and Green, but you just wonder if the pitcher in general, the young pitcher in general, when is that going to kind of run its course where maybe those guys get drafted later and teams go more offense early on and maybe pick up some pitchers later on? Because anymore, Al, these starters, the goal right now seems to be if you can get 5 innings out of a guy, you feel like you've accomplished something. It's okay. Now I've got past the first 5 innings. I'll work my bullpen, and that number of innings, by the way, used to be when you and I were growing up was 9. Then it became 8, maybe 8 in the '84 year. Maybe it was 8, or even 7. Bringing Rolly Hernandez in the 7th inning, maybe in the 8th inning or whatever. Okay. Then it became, and just as you moved along throughout history, the innings leaders would go from, it was 300 that was the
Right.
the benchmark, 300 innings. Then it became 275. Then it became 250. And then, a guy who threw 250 innings was considered a workhorse. Now
It's 200 now.
Now it's 200. Now
yeah.
it's not even really 200, but 200 is probably on the outskirts of it. But so I'm wondering now, and the other thing too is, these, don't forget, I don't care how good a guy is, he's still only going to take the mound once a week, essentially.
Yeah.
Once every 5 games, sometimes 6 if there's a rain out or an off day.
Yeah.
So you're going to see he's going to take the baseball once every 5th or 6th day. Okay. So you're going to get one start out of him really in any given calendar week. Okay.
Yeah.
So how much, I just wonder when teams are going to start to say, you know what? The game is going toward offense right now. And I'm going to put my eggs in the big bat basket instead of the big arm basket, because as you've said, and has been proven, again, not just in Detroit, these big arms are high risk, high reward. And the problem is, though, Al, is that the risk almost always overwhelms the reward.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Yeah. And just to kind of drive your point home, I just brought up on Baseball Reference for last year, the guys, the most innings pitched leaders. And the leading guy who threw the most innings was Sandy Alcantara with Miami, and he threw 228 2/3 innings. 228. And other than that, there was 8 other guys who pitched more than 200, but they were all between 205 and 200 for innings pitched. So yeah, right now 200 innings is a freaking outlier anymore. It's crazy the way it is.
I wonder how many complete games were thrown last year throughout the entire Major League schedule.
Well, let me bring up the league leaders anyway. Cantera had 6.
I bet 6.
He had 6, but other than that, there was one had 3, 2 guys had 2, and about 15 guys had 1 shutout. Wow. So that's it.
Well, shutout, not shutouts, complete games.
Oh, complete game. Yeah, exactly. Complete games, I should say.
Okay.
But yeah. The leading. Remember, 6 would be like a month for guys back in the day.
No question.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, here's shutouts. You know who led the league in shutouts? 1. And there's about 10 guys.
Yeah.
No, actually about 15 guys all had 1 shutout. That was it. So that's what what led the major leagues was 1 shutout. Could you imagine that even 10 years ago? 1 shutout led major leagues. But that's how much the game has changed. That's how much it's become specialized.
Yeah. So I just
it's like you do not want starting pitchers to face a lineup a third time. I think that's pretty much standard operating procedure now.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good or bad. It just is the way baseball is now.
Right. So sooner or later, though, Al, what my point is that sooner or later, that's got to find its way into the way teams draft. I mean, it's got to eventually. I mean, this whole notion of drafting high school pitchers up top toward the upper rounds. I don't get it. I don't. First of all, it takes forever to develop. You draft a kid who's 18 years old out of high school, who's a fireballer. Okay. And you might see him in 5 years. You might. Now, if he's really, really, really heralded, you might see him in 3, maybe. 3. No sooner than 3 for sure. Usually 3 to 5 years down the line, where he even makes his debut in the big leagues, much less becomes entrenched. And I don't get it. I mean, I know that you have to. I mean, I'm not saying you don't have to have pitchers, but I don't. The way the game is going anymore, I think what you're trying. We were talking a little bit again back to the football thing. We were talking about Anzalone. You were talking about, well, if you got a guy who's maybe a 0 WAR linebacker or a little bit more than that, but he knows the offense, he's a glue guy. I'm willing to roll with that. Same thing with pitchers. If I have a guy with a whip of 1.4, 1.3, but he's going to get me through the first 5 innings with minimal damage, and then I turn it over to the bullpen. I just
And
don't know
almost
why
all these bullpen guys are throwing 95 to 100.
Yeah,
You know?
that's what. Frankly, if I'm gonna spend my draft capital on a big arm, if I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna spend my capital on a guy that's gonna come out of the bullpen.
Yeah,
I'm not that interested. Excuse me, I'm not that interested in putting my draft capital into a starting pitcher. I'm really not.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather, if I'm going to sink money or sink capital into a young arm who I think can be a big arm for me.
Right.
I want that arm. I want that arm coming out of the bullpen in the 7th inning. I want that arm coming out of the bullpen in the 8th inning. I want that arm coming out of the bullpen anytime after the starter's out. It's got to get some key outs in this, because I still maintain that people still undervalue the outs you get in the 6th and 7th inning versus the outs you get later on. And I maintain that the outs that you get in the 6th and 7th inning are by far, to me, more high leverage situations than the outs you get in the 9th inning.
Yeah.
When you come into the game with nobody on base, with a 2 or 3 run lead, and which is by baseball's rules, a save situation, granted.
Yeah.
And I come in and I'm going to throw 18 pitches to get 3 outs, maybe put a guy on base.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it. I don't get it. You know, I thank God there's guys like AJ Hinch.
Yeah.
There's some managers like Hinch who will say the quiet part out loud, which is, I'm not interested in designating a closer per se. Now, some guys will kind of fall into that role, like Jimenez and so forth.
Yeah.
Soto. Kind of, because there's some guys that you only want in that situation, because you know why? Because you don't trust them in the 6th and 7th inning.
Right.
These guys like Soto, for example. To me, it's safer, which is going to sound crazy, to bring Soto in the 9th inning when you've got a 2 or 3 run lead and nobody on base.
Yeah.
Then bringing him in the middle of a rally in the 7th inning where you've got the tying run at the plate and you're trying to protect the lead. That's where you need your big guy. Right. That's where you need your big bullpen guy. Not in the 9th inning when nobody's on base and he can come in clean. No. Because why? Because a guy like Soto, you can't trust him to come in and throw strikes. Yeah. I don't trust Soto to come in with men on base when he's got to throw strikes immediately.
Yeah.
I don't mean give him 10 or 12 pitches to get into it. I mean, immediately he's got to throw strikes. He doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, that's the new game. You know, exactly. But I was just looking at the Tigers roster here, and just looking at the number of pitchers who have had severe or have missed significant amount of time of injury. It's crazy. I mean, let's see. We're looking at Casey Mize, Tariq Skubal, Matt Manning. Yeah. Yep. Matt Boyd, Michael Fulmer, who's no longer Tiger, but Fulmer was a Tiger for real, and he missed a long
time.
Have
some problems too.
Yep. Alex Faedo. So is Joey Wentz. And
Turnbull.
Spencer Turnbull.
Yeah.
All of this significant amount of time due to Tommy John's shoulder injuries and obliques and core surgeries, all kinds of stuff. I mean, that's essentially the rotation they hope to have has all missed at one time or another significant amount of time due to injuries. They're all young starting pitchers.
You know, so, I think that the whole Verlander Scherzer thing.
Yeah.
I think it ruined the Tigers. They fell into this. It's so maddening when I think about this now.
Yeah.
I'm starting to really get upset about this because
they
just got so enamored with these young pitchers.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. That they were just so enamored with these young 18, 19-year-old, in some cases, 18, 19 years old pitchers out of high school.
Right.
Oh my God, I don't understand it. And now I'm reading your show notes again about this Marcelo Meyer guy.
Yeah.
And oh God. And it's not even about Job getting hurt.
Right.
I mean, Job getting hurt is obviously salt in the wound, but Oh my God.
Yep.
I don't get it. I don't understand what the I don't understand what the fascination was.
Yeah.
Like they always felt. I think the Tigers felt like they always wanted to draft the next Verlander or the next Scherzer or whatever. And I don't. God darn it.
And they're unicorns. They really are.
The whole thing about the Tigers, it seems like, Al, the more I'm thinking about this, is it's not just this. It just seems like the Tigers were stuck in a time warp.
Yeah.
Everything, baseball was moving on and it evolving, and the Tigers were stuck in place.
Right.
And I'm talking about the analytics thing. They were slow on the uptake on that one. This drafting thing we're talking about.
Right.
It just seems like that they were just, everybody else was moving on, doing other things, and the Tigers were just stuck in the, like, drafting in 2021 like it was 2010.
Yeah.
Or 2009 or 2008. Right.
Yep.
And it just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I think this Al Avila tenure, it's one of those tenures that as you look as it gets further in the rearview mirror, it's going to look worse.
Yeah.
It's we knew it was pretty bad. We knew it was pretty bad when it was happening. But as the years go by now, and as the team is trying to recover from that, you're realizing just how bad it was.
Right.
And it should never have gone on that long.
Nope.
But what are you going to do?
Yeah, remember he got a goddamn contract extension, which the Chris Ilitch couldn't even remember what year he gave it to him. So anyway, before we kind of wrap things up, I think we'll probably hold off on talking Red Wings at this point because it's depressing.
Yeah.
And it really isn't much that we haven't covered over the past few podcasts.
Right.
When it comes to what's going on with the Wings, other than they're on a horrible streak right now and they're not playing well, and it really looks like they're in that no man's land where they're going to get like right now if the draft lottery odds, if they ended up with the draft lottery odds they currently have, they will be picking 10th in the draft, which is essentially no man's land when it comes to finding an impact player. But we'll get into that next time we talk. Hell, the season will be about over, if not already over. So we'll be able to probably give a Red Wings post-mortem as well. But we'll touch a little bit on the WBC, the World Baseball Classic, which is going on right now as we speak, Greg. I mean, look at the TV here. And right now it's Japan 3, USA 1, top of 5. So I've watched some of it. I watched the game last night, which was very, very fun. The game between Japan and Mexico. Very entertaining game that Japan won on a walk-off 2-run double in the bottom of the ninth. A very exciting game. But what's funny is, does anyone in the U.S. really care? I know you've barely watched it. I know you admitted you haven't watched much of it. And I know for myself, I've seen people online. I've seen some people on my Facebook timeline. I've on Twitter, on Reddit, that they're like, I really don't care. What it's important to me is the regular season and the World Series. But it's obvious, though, when you watch the game, especially the international players, they are completely into it. You had Mike Trout saying how thrilled he is to represent his country and play in a competition like this, how exciting he finds it. And the international fan bases and the international players are wildly into the WBC. But here in the U.S., at least with the U.S. fan bases, you're like, I just don't want my guys to get hurt. And reinforcing that idea that we hate this because important players get hurt, we've seen 2 key players for teams have very severe injuries. Mets closer Edwin Diaz, who just signed a huge contract, is done for the year as he tore up his knee celebrating a win over Puerto Rico. I remember I caught the end of that game, and they were literally carrying him off the field. And then in the game that I believe sent the U.S. into the final, Astros second baseman MVP, a great player, Jose Altuve, is out indefinitely. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if he's out for at least 2-3 months because he suffered a fractured thumb when he was hit by a pitch. So American fan bases, Greg, are pissed off that important players are getting hurt. international fan bases are absolutely thrilled by this and are having the time of their life. If you watch the games, or if you see highlights of the games, these games are packed with expats and international fans who are just going absolutely bonkers for this. And that's what I think makes it so much fun to watch, is that when you're watching the fan bases of the Dominican, of Venezuela, and Puerto Rico, and Mexico, and Japan absolutely losing their shit during these games, makes for it. It kind of reminds me of the Soccer World Cup. It really does.
That's a good analogy, but I think what it is, Al, is that American baseball fans are very provincial when it comes to baseball.
Yeah.
And they look at this World Baseball Classic, even though nobody cares about spring training.
Right.
Games,
yeah.
They still look at it as an intrusion. The only way this would be more of an intrusion is if they took like 2 weeks off in the middle of the year. They said, okay, instead of having an all-star break.
What's funny, I got an email from The Athletic today in their newsletter saying that's what they should do. Replace the all-star game and put the tournament there instead.
And other sports have done similar things. Hockey has said we're not going to have an all-star game, or instead going to do the Olympics. Right. Or other international tournaments. And so I think that's part of this, is what you're seeing. A baseball fan like me who's not really moved by this.
Yeah, and not like the Tigers have been really involved other than having what Baez played in it for Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I think again, I'm coming at this from.
I'm sorry, Miguel Cabrera making cameo appearances for Venezuela. Yeah,
I mean, I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone who's going to be 60 this year and who grew up watching baseball in the early 70s.
You don't look a day over 58, Greg. Let me say that. So,
and so that's the perspective I'm coming from, and to me, baseball is Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Okay. It's I'm not moved. I don't watch college baseball. I'll be transparent. I don't watch college baseball. I don't find that intriguing whatsoever.
Right.
I don't watch minor league baseball.
Yeah.
I don't watch international baseball, and I don't watch the Olympics when the baseball in the Olympics. I don't.
Yeah.
To me, baseball is Major League Baseball. Now, that's not to say.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I think that the only good players in baseball are Americans. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, frankly, I wish the Tigers would be more international in their talent search. That's another story. But what I'm saying is that other forms of baseball that's not Major League Baseball doesn't move me. And I know it's great players are on these teams because these are the best of the best, presumably. Yeah. And I know that Japan and the United States is a compelling matchup for a lot of people because of where Japanese baseball is versus American baseball and so forth. And a lot of these big stars that have come over from Japan and have done real well. Right. I understand all that. It just isn't something that doesn't move my meter, because I just look, when I think of baseball, I think of major league teams. I don't think of anything else. And even though baseball has been, tons of MLB players have come from these other countries that have come from college ranks. I appreciate all that. I just don't care to watch it. Yeah. I don't like to watch college baseball because I don't like aluminum bats. I don't like the sound they make.
Ping. Yeah, it sounds like golf clubs, honestly.
I don't know the players. I don't find the college. I don't know. I still don't know to this day. I don't know how what the College World Series format is. I couldn't tell you. If you put a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you what the format. I just know it's played in Omaha. I don't even know why they call it the College World Series. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. So, but I think what you're seeing, what you're talking about is that American fans, and this is the point I'm getting at in a roundabout way, is that when you compare the international fan to the big league, major league United States fan, it's because we kind of take baseball for granted. Yeah. That's our quote quotation. Our national pastime, our game, just like Canadians used to look at hockey as their game. Right. We look at baseball as our game, and nobody else better infringe upon that. And even taking time out during the frickin' spring training, which nobody cares about, has people annoyed. Okay. Yeah. So why? Because they feel like this is their game, not to be infringed upon. Right. And that's why these international people are climbing all over themselves to watch these games, because they don't get a chance to see these players like we do. We play 162 games in this country.
Yeah.
We can go see these players anytime. These international fans, though, don't have that. Even in this day and age of streaming services, and it's still not as accessible, or it's not as convenient, let's put it that way, for them to watch these players play as it is for them right now. Yeah. So I understand why they're excited about it. It gives them a chance. They don't have as many sports in their respective countries to watch, period, in general. Right. So now they have a chance to watch this high profile, high competition version of baseball. Yeah. That we just look at it, we as Americans just kind of look at it as, well, it's something that just, let's get it out of the way. Let's just, let's get back to spring training. Let's get back to the narratives of who's going to make the big league roster. Let's talk about who's going to win the divisions. This WBC stuff, let's get it out of the way. Just so if they ever said, we're going to take, instead of playing an all-star game in July, we're going to take 2 weeks off and do a World Baseball Club, the country would lose its mind, and not in a good way. I can guarantee you it would not. I maintain. Now, you're going to get some folks who are probably those soccer folks, by the way, the American soccer fans who can be insufferable, by the way.
Oh yeah,
those fans will get into the World Baseball Classic in the summertime.
Yeah,
everybody else will look at it as a huge intrusion, and will mock it, and will scoff at it, and will make fun of it and say, we can't wait. Let's get back to real baseball, which is Major League Baseball. That's just the way American baseball fans are. So I'm not at all surprised in this delineation you're putting forward about the international fans being way more into this than the American fans.
Yeah, it's and the other thing is that you could argue that Major League Baseball period is no longer the national pastime. Yeah. It's the NFL. I mean, we just spent over an hour talking about NFL free agency, for Christ's sake. And it's different. When we grew up, when we were teenagers, it was still America's pastime.
It's the same thing there too. NFL fans don't. You think the average NFL fan cares about games played in UK or games?
You think the average NFL fan cares about the XFL or the USFL?
Well, yeah,
it's the same kind of thing. I don't. That falls into your. I don't enjoy watching minor league baseball or college baseball or international baseball. I feel the same way about the USFL and the XFL.
Right. And you're right to feel that way. And
it's not really football.
Right. And the thing is that NFL fans don't care about teams going overseas to play an NFL game.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah.
And nobody wants their team to do it either, frankly. Yeah. It's no longer who wants to watch the Lions play the Chiefs in London? I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess ultimately it doesn't really matter where the game's played because who cares? But I don't. It's the same thing. NFL fans, to them, football is NFL in the United States.
Right.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And frankly, you can make a really good argument that is all it is, to be honest with you, because all the other attempts to internationalize football, and to American football, and all other attempts to try these leagues that are off-season leagues have always fallen flat on their faces. Because at the pro football there's a certain talent level.
Yeah.
That if it's not competed at that level, fans don't care about it.
Right.
Because they only want to see pro football played at the highest level. Let's face it. The highest level is the NFL. And it'll always be that way.
Yep.
And it always will be. And that's why.
I mean, you could argue the top two sports in the U.S. professional football and college football. It really is.
Now, the funny thing about that is that there was a time that predated you and me. There was a time where college football was arguably the national pastime.
Yeah, pro football was full of scallywags.
Pro football was nothing.
Yeah.
College football from Red Grange's time into the early to mid 50s ruled this nation. Absolutely ruled the nation.
Yeah, look at the great college players who didn't even play in the NFL at that point. There's no 20 in it. Yeah.
College football was king.
Yep.
Even more so than baseball. I mean, college football was huge.
Yeah.
All the big stars that were in football played college football.
Yeah.
It wasn't really until the mid 50s when the AAFC and the NFL merged, and all those teams got together, and the Browns, the 49ers, all those teams went to the NFL.
Yeah.
That's when pro football and television.
Yeah, and actually, they say the game that changed all that was the 1958 championship game. What was it? The Colts beat the Giants on national television in overtime. And they say that's what changed everything.
Attendance at college football games in the 30s, 40s, and 50s was through the roof.
Well, why do you think the Big House is as big as it is?
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl was built.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know when that was built, but it was built for 1 million people, practically.
Yeah.
Because then you had stars like Red Grange and Sammy Baugh and Bronco Nagurski and I know those were NFL stars, but they were big in college.
No, like Tom Harmon, one of the greatest players in Michigan history. I don't even think did he even play professional football?
That's a good
question. Became well known as a broadcaster after his Michigan days.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But honestly, Tom Harmon is known more for his accomplishments in college football and his accomplishments as a broadcaster compared to anything that happened in between. And that was pretty commonplace back in the 30s, 40s, and into the 50s. You're very, very right. And I think there's one other thing that's going against the WBC is that they're kind of stuck as to when they can play it. You can't play it after the season's over. And as we just said, you're not going to play it in the middle of the season. So they're stuck playing it now. But what else is going on now? The NCAA tournament, the biggest betting event other than the Super Bowl ever conceived. I know. What I'm going to do when I'm home all day on a Friday. I'm going to have college basketball on my television from noon to after midnight. Because there's one made for television event that is perfect because of the underdog factor and the Cinderella factor. It's the NCAA tournament, and we've seen it this year. With Farley Dickinson beating number 1 seeded Purdue. We've got a couple of Cinderellas that have made it into the Sweet 16. What's the Farley Dickinson lost to? Trying to remember who they lost. Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic's in the freaking Sweet 16. That's the sort of stuff that people just eat up, And we've had a bunch of buzzer beaters, and so between all that, and obviously that basketball is on 4 different networks, and they're in the first 2 weeks of the tournament, it completely overshadows the WBC. And the other thing to remember is a lot of the WBC, the early round games, were being played in the middle of the night because they were being played in Japan, or they're being played in Korea. And who's going to wake up and who's going to be up at 4:00 in the morning to watch Israel play South Korea? So people, I don't think people even realize what's going on until it gets into the quarterfinal round, the knockout round, which is all being played here in the States. So you got that going against it as well. But I think in the end, I think you're right. We're a football nation now, Greg. It's football or bust anymore. And you could probably argue at this point, it's pro football, then it's college football, then it's the NBA, then it's Major League Baseball, then probably college basketball, then hockey, and honestly, then throw soccer somewhere in there as well. And not the MLS, more like the Premier League, because that's all over the place on the weekends here now. So, but yeah, it's baseball. Major League Baseball wants this to become a thing, and probably overseas it is turning into a thing. But I think you're right. Here in the States, it's never going to be a huge deal because of how we perceive the game and how the game is played, and the fact that it's played at the same exact time as the NCAA tournament, which is dominates everything right now. So,
In answer to your Tom Harmon question, I looked it up. He did play 2 seasons for the Rams, but he didn't play. He was out of college football for 6 years before he did that. He went into broadcasting and in the service, and came back and decided to try to play football again. Lasted 2 seasons with the Rams, and retired, and then went into full time into broadcasting. So there was a brief pro career for Harmon, but it was 6 years after he graduated from Michigan. So
yeah, it's worth noting that he then gave birth to my girlfriend's favorite actor, Mark Harmon. Yeah, which is funny. When I met her, and she first started, got me into watching NCIS. That's her all-time favorite show, and she got me into watching it. I go, "Oh, Mark Harmon! I remember when he played quarterback for UCLA." And she's like, "What?" She had no clue that her favorite actor was the starting quarterback for 2 years at UCLA in the early 70s. I mean, I remember watching him play. And it was always brought up, Tom Harmon's son, Mark Harmon, quarterback of UCLA. And she's like, no. I go, yeah, he was a Division I quarterback. So, and it's just funny how these things work out. I had no idea that he played the NFL, but he must not have made much of an impression, as you said, for various reasons. So, but yeah, it was a different era. And NFL careers, for the most part, were very low because, as you said, they could make more money doing other things. So, all right. I think we've gone off on enough tangents today. I mean, we started off with Springtime for Hitler, and we're ending with Mark Harmon on NCIS. So I think it's a good time to start hitting the home stretch. So who's your jerk of the week?
Well, I hate to get a local kid here, but this Antoine Davis. I know the last time we talked, you made your jerk of the week.
Yeah,
was the people who were
denigrating.
What's that?
People who are denigrating his accomplishment.
Right. But now this is a rarity in jerk of the week.
He's gone from a hero to a villain, in other words.
Right. Because my jerk of the week is Davis himself, because he's being very petulant.
Yeah.
He, as you know, his team, Detroit, was 14-19.
Right.
Clearly out of the mix for any sort of postseason bid.
Yeah.
And I think he fell 4 points short of Mirovic. Okay.
Yeah, he did 3 to tie, and he missed the final 3-pointer.
Okay. Yeah. So now he says, okay, I'm going to read. This is a quote here. I'm upset about it. What he's upset about is not getting an invitation to this, what they call the CBI, the College Basketball Invitational, because his team was 14-19. Yeah. I'm upset about it, he said. I feel like I got cheated out of something that they can't ever give back to me. I think it's selfish and weird that people emailed or called the CBI to say we shouldn't be in the tournament. I'm not sure if that's true or not, because they didn't want me to break the record. I'm not sure if that's true. But there's nothing to hold my head down about. I still feel like I'm the best scorer in my generation, especially finishing number 2 behind Mirovic. Well, I don't. First of all, he had 1 million more games. He played 1 million more games than Mirovic ever played. That's the first thing. I wish he would be taking the same attitude about this record that you wished the people who were denigrating the record would have taken when you made them your jerk of the week 2 weeks ago. I didn't know Davis was going to act like this. I really didn't. I'm very disappointed that he would come off this way and say he feels cheated. What are you cheated about? You played way more games than Mirovic. You had a 3-point shot that Mirovic didn't have access to. Your team was 14-19. Now, if this team was 19-14 and didn't get a bid, I'll buy it. But you're 14-19, didn't deserve to get in there. What do you cheer? So now it's not really. So it's not about the team, is it? So it's not so much about. It's not so much about we didn't get a bid to see if we as a team could make some noise in the tournament. It's I didn't get a chance to break the record, so I'm cheated now. Yeah. Even though I just, it's a bad look. Yeah. I'm disappointed that he would take that stance. And I'm sorry, I can't overlook it. I just think it comes off really looking bad. And so my jerk of the week is Antoine Davis.
Yeah, it's a shame. We should be celebrating his career, and it's leaving a bad taste in everybody's mouth at this point. I'm completely with you there. No, I was, for my jerk of the week, I wasn't sure where it was going to go. I mean, there was the controversy at the end of the Florida Atlantic FDU game where you had the kid who tried to FDU waved a white flag and stopped guarding him, and even still a player for Florida Atlantic tried to do a 360 dunk. And he missed, and he got booed, and everybody lost their minds. But at least it all blew over. Or I was thinking about, you had the homophobic goalie in San Jose.
Right.
Who refused to wear a warm-up jersey. It's not even in the game. It was just during warm-ups, because he and I think the words he used was, "I love all people, but I'm not supportive of their lifestyle." Yeah, right, bullshit. But I think my jerk of the week, Greg, I'm going to go back to the media. That's always a good place to go for jerks. And I'm going to Colin Cowherd, what he said about Michael Jordan after Michael Jordan announced he's selling the Charlotte Hornets. He's in process of selling a majority share.
Okay.
And Jordan, he's still going to have a small ownership stake. And to be honest, the Hornets have not been very successful in his tenure as owner. But Cowherd decided it was a good time to bash Jordan for, well, I think the first thing he said, take out Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson. This whole Michael Jordan mythology is sort of just that. So he said, I think it's the other way around. Wouldn't you think that Phil Jackson and Scottie Pippen are who they are because of Jordan, not the other way around? But then he went into, Cowherd went into denigrating his, even though he's the only majority black owner in all of sports right now, at least all of U.S. professional sports, right. He ripped on his ownership, even though, say what you will about the success of the Hornets or not. You got to give Michael Jordan credit for one, being able to buy a team as a black man, and the fact that he is going to make a huge profit off the sale, because he's going to make massive profit off. I think he bought it for $300 million. It's probably going to sell it for $1 billion or more. He's going to make a ridiculous profit. But be that as it may, and then Cowherd went into the baseball thing, ripping him about his foray to minor league baseball, that he wasn't good enough to make the major leagues, and essentially it was Colin Cowherd being Colin Cowherd, just like Stephen Screaming A. Jackson does his shit on or Max Kellerman or who's the guy on Fox? What's his name? The worst of all. That he does, who used to be on with Stephen A. The guy used to cover the Dallas Cowboys. You know what I'm talking about?
Whitlow? No.
What's that?
Not Whitlow.
No. Oh shit! How can we not remember his name? Oh my god!
Not Bayless? Skip Bayless?
Yeah, Skip Bayless, who was the worst of all of this. But Colin Cowherd had to get his name out there by dissing Michael Jordan for essentially bullshit reasons. But the biggest bullshit was saying that Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson made him. Other than, I really think it was the other way around, if you ask me. Say what you will about Phil Jackson. Does Phil Jackson, if he isn't coaching, Michael Jordan, and he isn't coaching, Kobe Bryant and Shaq? No, he isn't. That's it's a players' league. It's not a coaches' league in the NBA. But it's just that what Cowherd said, Greg, is just a symptom of the illness that is debate television and sports talk radio, where you have to have the most black or white opinion. You can't have a nuanced take anymore. I mean, you can have a nuanced take about Michael Jordan's ownership of the Hornets, but to come out and insult his career, insult all the things he's done, just because that's how things are on debate television and sports talk radio, it's ridiculous. It's why I don't watch any of this stuff anymore. I mean, it's kind of like, what hath pardon the interruption brought us? Because that's what started all this stuff with that little half-hour debate show. And now ESPN and FS1 and Sports Talk Radio is nothing but two guys arguing about topics that are honestly should have a lot more nuance. And Colin Cowherd is right in the middle of it because he's awful with this kind of stuff. So that's my jerk of the week. I know it's kind of all over the place there, but it's one of those topics when you start getting into this debate. Everything's got to be a debate in sports media. It just drives me up a fucking wall. Pardon my French.
No, I agree.
Yes.
That's a bad take. This whole, jeez,
I mean, Michael Jordan has his issues, but you can't, but it's, but just to say, oh yeah, it was because of Scottie Pippen. Yeah.
Okay, now,
Right.
I say what you will about Bobby Knight. Okay, we can all say what you will. Okay, about Bobby Knight. But one thing Bobby Knight said, that puts to rest this nonsense that Howard's talking about is that Bobby Knight said, because Bobby Knight got a chance to coach Jordan in the Olympics,
right?
And he said that Michael Jordan was the best. And this is his quote. It was the best team player of any team sport ever.
Right.
End of discussion. And he said there was nothing that Michael Jordan couldn't do. There was nothing he couldn't adapt to. So I say what you will about Bobby Knight, but I'll take his word for way more than I'll take Howard's word.
Exactly. Exactly. So, all right, let's get the hell out of here, Greg. Why don't you get out any thank yous and let us know what guests we have coming up and things like that.
Well,
and social media as well. So
well, we're gonna not be with you in 2 weeks from tonight. We'll take that night off because I
will be on the road, as they say. Yes,
we will come back on April 18th with Siddy Hall, our NBA stats guru. We'll break down the Pistons' horrific season.
Yeah,
take a look at that. Maybe take a look at the NBA playoffs and maybe look ahead to the draft and so forth. With Siddy on the 18th, 2 weeks after that, May 2nd, our old friend Mike Schottey will be here breaking down the NFL draft, which will have just occurred.
Yep.
And Mike will do that for us on May 2nd. And follow us on Twitter at The Knee Jerks. Follow me on Twitter, if you would, at Greg, and of course, read my WordPress Out of Bounds blog that comes out pretty much every Monday. I appreciate that. Thank you, to my lovely wife, Sharon, who puts up with this nonsense. And thank you, Big Al, for making Tuesday night so gosh darn fun.
Yes. And thank you, Greg, for not being part of the angry media debate industrial complex. Thank you for some nuanced takes. Thank you very much. I want to give a shout. Thank you for taking the time out to talk sports with me for a couple hours, and also putting up with the technical staff news we had before we started recording. At least I think we got everything taken care of at this point. Give a shout out to Linda, who's happily saving lives in the ER. She loves her new gig. I'll give a shout out to Beaton for making another appearance on the show. And we need to get. Oh, and of course, if you. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. You can find us on all the usual places. You want to listen to the show and subscribe, so you can be alerted every time we have a podcast. Normally every 2 weeks, but we're taking the next show off. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Deezer, Radio Public. TheDjerks.net is the homepage where you will find all the show notes, all the links to social media, links to Greg's blog, links to things we've talked about, and of course, where you can also download the MP3 straight from there. And I think with that, Greg, we can get the hell out of here because I think you need to get that orange juice and a cookie in you. So, but Greg, he's on video in front of me. He looks fine. He's not on the verge of passing out. He probably needs a strong drink more than anything else. So with that, we need to get the hell out of here. So I need to start packing, I think, at this point. So I'm going to be in Florida for 2 freaking weeks with a bunch of senior citizens, God help me. So with that, let's get the hell out of here. So until this time, 1 month from now, when we'll have our stats gurus, Siddy Hall, on the show to talk NBA, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see you in 4 weeks.
Yes.